Join me as I make Italian bread with freshly milled wheat. Welcome to White Shadow Fare. Make it homemade and make it with love. So I started by milling some hard white wheat, or you can use store-bought white wheat. Into my mixer, I added a teaspoon of honey and 350 grams of hot water. And then I'm just combining the two to melt the honey into the water. Now we're going to start by hydrating our wheat. So I'm going to add 250 grams of hard wheat. As I said, I used white wheat for this. Then I had freshly milled. And I'm just going to give it a quick mix to get it completely wet. And then I'm going to let it sit for about 20 minutes. And that's just giving the wheat some time to hydrate completely and to soften that bran. So once I have this all mixed in, and I've scraped down the sides, I'm going to cover it and let it sit for 20 minutes. Then at the end of the 20 minutes, take the top off and I am going to add 7 grams of yeast, give that a good mix, cover it up, give it another 10 minutes, let the yeast bloom. Once the yeast has bloomed, we're going to go ahead and add 250 grams of bread flour. Now I know, white flour, it's a big no-no, but we are making Italian bread here. I'm adding 10 grams of salt, and I used Redmond's real salt. And Italian bread needs this white bread flour in order for it to taste anything like Italian bread. 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and that is all of the ingredients that we're going to add. Now I've tried making this with all wheat, backed it off to 25% wheat, and 50-50 was the most wheat that I could get, so I'm going to knead this for 10 minutes. And I'm going to check to make sure that it's hit the windowpane stage. Now I use a Bosch universal mixer, so my mixer might work at a different speed than yours. This kneads everything pretty quickly, so about 8 to 10 minutes is all that I need when kneading my dough, but you might need a little bit more if you have a different type of mixer. So as you can see here, it's just going through its process, and every once in a while I'm going to stop and I'm going to feel the dough, and I'm going to make sure that it's not too sticky. And that window pane stage, I'm going to look for stickiness. So as you can see here, it's very sticky, and as I pull it apart, it rips apart. So makes me a little bit sad, but it just means I have to keep kneading. The longer you knead, the less sticky it will be, and the gluten will be developing, and we'll get that nice stretchiness. Now in white dough, the window pane is very thin, clear, easy to see through, but since we've added some whole wheat to this, it's not going to be quite as easy to see. Every few minutes I'm going to check and see it's not sticking all over my fingers anymore, so that's a definite improvement, and I'm able to stretch it without it ripping, so it's getting closer to where I need it. So I'm giving it just another minute or two. Checking it one more time. Once again, it's not sticking all over my knuckles as I touch it. It's very stretchy. And this is the perfect doneness for me. So now it's time to remove my beating paddles, and I'm going to cover it up and let it rise anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the temperature of your home. So for me, 45 minutes is pretty much the sweet spot. I do keep my home very cold, and it's winter time here. We are eating predominantly 100% whole wheat flour at this point in time, but every once in a while, you need white flour to make things taste just right. So now that it has risen nicely and 45 minutes has gone by, the dough has doubled in size, it's time to go ahead and shape our dough. Scraping it out of the mixing bowl, and we eat so much Italian food. Every week we have at least one Italian dish, so having real Italian bread was important to us. And as much as I would like to use 100% whole wheat, it just wasn't making anybody happy doing that. So I'm dividing this into 2 equal sized loaves, getting them as close as possible. And you really don't need anything special. This is going to bake on a rimmed cookie sheet here at the end. So I'm just going to kind of shape it into a log. But first I'm going to put it into 2 dough balls and let those rest. So I've knocked back the air out of it. I'm just going to give it a quick cover with a tea towel and come back in 5 minutes. And it should be easier to stretch and put into the right shape. Use a little bit of flour as needed and try not to add too much flour. Now, as I said, we eat Italian food at least once a week, and Italian bread has always been one of our favorite parts, and we did want to get wheat into it, but at the same time, we were not willing to sacrifice and have just 100% wheat and not have the flavor of the Italian bread. So this is what we found to be the absolute sweet spot, getting the most amount of whole wheat in there so that we get as much nutrition into the bread as possible. But unfortunately, we still do have to use some bread flour. So now I'm going to cover that, let that rise for about an hour. And in the meantime, when it's getting closer to that hour, I'm going to preheat my oven to 400 degrees. Now I use a cast iron skillet in the bottom of my oven, and I just add water to that so that I get steam in there. So I'm scoring each loaf, and then I'm going to put it onto my baking tray. And you want to spread them out from one another so that they have room to expand. And you're going to bake this from 30 to 35 minutes until the internal temperature reaches a minimum of 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And look how beautiful these came out. I mean, absolutely stunning. We've been making this now for a couple of weeks, and this comes out perfect every time. So the steam definitely helps. So once it's cool, you're going to slice it, you're going to enjoy it, and we end up freezing one of the loaves for the following week, and that comes out perfectly fine. This past weekend, I made 4 loaves. We used 1, froze 3, so for the next month, I don't have to worry about making this again. It's soft, it's delicious. Use whatever kind of wheat that you would like. Chef's kiss, scrumptious flavor. I hope that you will give this one a try. It really is delicious, even though it does contain a little bit of white flour. Thank you for joining me at White Shadow Fare.